Good to see you right here at Bellevue, Shadow Lake, Heritage Ridge, online, down at the venue. Always a joy and an honor to be one church, multiple locations. Just a joy and an honor to do that. Hey, I want to start by telling a story. A few years ago, there was a guy by the name of Jack. Jack was walking along a steep cliff, and as he was walking along a steep cliff, something happened and he slipped and he fell. And on the way down, he grabbed a branch and he held onto the branch as tight as he possibly could. Realizing that he was walking alone, he just started to shout for help. He was holding on to the branch, understanding that if he let go of the branch, he was going to fall to his imminent death. And so he's holding and he's holding and he's holding, and he's yelling and he's yelling and he's yelling. And just as he's about ready to give up, he hears a voice. Hey, Jack. Yes, who is it? It's me, God. Jack said, all right, God, I'll serve you for the rest of my life. What do you need me to do in this moment? And God said, Jack, I need you to let go of the branch. Jack said, what do you let go of the branch? God, I don't think you want to, if I let go of the branch, I'm going to fall and I'm going to die. And God says, listen, Jack, if you would just do what I ask you to do, I promise everything's going to be okay. Just let go of the branch. After a long silence, Jack said, is there anybody else up there? I think that's where a lot of us are in life, right? That God might be calling us to do something, or we might feel like God's calling us to do something, and day after day after day, we're just holding on. We're holding on to a branch, holding on to hope, holding on to something, terrified to let go. And the story we're going to look at today is a story that comes from Luke chapter 5. So if you have your Bible, go ahead and open up to Luke chapter 5. And in Luke chapter 5, as we're going to see here in a second, Jesus is going to enter the scene of a guy by the name of Simon Peter. And he's going to ask Simon Peter to do something that is totally irrational, that's totally illogical. And he's going to ask him to do something that Simon Peter knows well how to do it, but Jesus is going to ask him to do something even greater. In fact, Jesus is going to ask him to cast his nets again, even though he's been fishing all night and he's caught literally nothing the night before. In fact, I brought a fishing net with me today. This is kind of like how I go fishing. When I go fishing, oftentimes I come back with nothing but net, right? My fishing and my basketball, it's all the same. Nothing but net. That's what I got. Some of you don't believe me. I'm a better fisherman than I am a basketball player, and I can't catch anything. So there's that. But anyway, I brought this net kind of as a representation of what took place that evening. When Peter goes out and goes fishing, he comes back with literally nothing. Now, his net would have been much bigger than this. It wouldn't have had a handle. It would have been a giant rope around a net that he casts out and brings back and casts out and brings back. And typically when they go fishing, they would catch a multitude of fish because this was his livelihood. See, when I go fishing and I bring nothing back, we still make ribs on the grill, right? We still do the thing. We weren't expecting that when I go fishing that I was going to bring something back for us to eat, because chances are I just wasn't. But in their livelihood, this is their livelihood. So when they go fishing and they bring nothing back, it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. This is their livelihood. This isn't a downturn in the economy. This is a threat of survival for them. And I think this is how a lot of us go through life. We've got our net, and we keep casting our net and casting our net and casting our net, whether it's in our finances, whether it's in our job, whether it's in our family, whether it's in a struggle that we've got, maybe an addiction, and we keep casting our net and casting our net and casting our net, doing it our way day after day after day, and every single day it comes back empty. It just keeps showing up in our life empty. And so what we're going to find today as we look at this story is we're going to find that Jesus asks us, just like he asks Peter and his friends, to cast it again. If you got your Bible, go ahead and open it up to Luke chapter 5. Let's read together the first couple of verses of Luke chapter 5. It says this. It says, one day, Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, and the people were crowding around him, listening to the word of God. So Jesus is preaching, and there's people crowded around listening to what Jesus is saying. Verse 2, he saw at water's edge 2 boats left there by fishermen who were washing their nets. Now, we'll read into this a little bit later on, but this is Simon Peter and his friends. This is the fishing business that they have. And they're there, they're washing their nets, and there's a boat right here, and these guys are washing and washing and washing and washing all of the stuff, and Jesus gets into the boat. And in a second, he's gonna preach to the crowd from the boat. And these guys, they're washing their nets, and it's empty, and they've had a long night, they're frustrated with everything going on. The image that I have here, how many of you remember the movie Forrest Gump? Few of you, okay? Some of you are like, what's that movie? You're 12, okay? But Forrest Gump was a great movie, but there's a scene in Forrest Gump where him and Lieutenant Dan are out fishing, and they come back in, and they start pulling the nets up, right? And there's like a toilet seat and a tin can and a shoe. That's the image that I have in this moment. These guys are pulling up these nets, and there's nothing to show for it. They're in a bad mood. This is their job. This is their livelihood. They've got nothing to show for it. They just want to go home, get a good night's rest, come back that night, and do it all over again the next day. Verse 3, this is Jesus, he got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon Peter, and he asked him to push out a little bit from shore, and then he sat down and he taught the people from the boat. So Jesus sees the boats, he sees these guys cleaning their nets, and this cleaning of nets wasn't just like 5 minutes. It would have taken a long time for them to clean their nets out. And so Jesus sees the boats, he's like, all right, I'm just gonna climb in. It doesn't appear that he asks permission. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. The text doesn't tell us that. But he just gets in the boat, and he looks at Simon Peter. He's like, hey, would you push me out a little bit? This is the equivalent that when you go to the park with your kids or maybe your grandkids, and they're like, would you push me on the swing? And all you want to do is just go sit at the picnic table. Like, that's the equivalent of what's happening right here. Like, no, I don't want to I just wanted to sit here and talk to other adults. That's why I'm here. Like, you can learn how to swing, figure it out on your own, right? So he gets in the boat. He's like, will you push me, Peter? And Peter's like, sure. And so Peter goes out and he pushes him out. And so Jesus sits down in the boat and he starts teaching. See, the water would have been the acoustics to an amphitheater to all of these people that are crowding around listening to Jesus teaching. And perhaps Peter is listening. Peter's cleaning his boats. He's frustrated. He's angry. He's upset. And he's just listening to what Jesus is saying. See, Jesus' name is spreading in the area. He's done some amazing things in the area. People are talking about his teaching. And so maybe Peter's listening going, well, what do you got for me too? Verse 4. This is Jesus, when he finished speaking, he said to Simon Peter, put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. So Jesus gets done teaching. And I don't know if it was a good sermon or a bad sermon. He just kind of changes the subject, right? It's like, hey, Peter, let's go fishing. I was talking to Matt Stevens this week. Matt is one of our youth pastors over at our Shadow Lake campus. And we were talking about this text together, and he said, this is the equivalent of when you've got the kitchen completely spotless. You've washed everything in the kitchen. You've turned the lights off. The dishwasher's running. The sink is empty. Everything is clean. Everything is spotless. You've swept. You've mopped. You've done the whole thing, and all of a sudden one of your kids comes in and goes, hey, can we bake something? These guys have cleaned their nets. They've spent time cleaning their nets. They're tired. They're frustrated. They don't want to go fishing any longer. Check out how Peter answers. Verse 5, Master. See, don't miss this. He hears what Jesus is teaching. He knows that Jesus is more than just some teacher. He knows that he's more than just some carpenter. He says, Master, we've worked hard all night, and we haven't caught anything. Jesus is like, hey, let's go fishing. And Peter's like, no. Hey, Jesus, we've been fishing all night. And we don't have, our nets are empty. We don't have anything to show for it. You can hear the exasperation in his voice, right? You can hear how tired he is, how irritated he is, how frustrated he is. They've been working all night long. He's a professional fisherman. He knows exactly what he's doing. I mean, this sea is full of fish. And fishing is one of the top industries in Palestine. And yet, they've got nothing. And Jesus says, hey, why don't you dirty the nets again? This isn't a small task. This is going to be, if they decide to do this, it's going to be hours of cleaning the nets all over again. Jesus goes, hey, let's go fishing. Now, if I'm Peter, I'm like, hey, listen, I tried. It didn't work. I just want to go to Early Bird. That's all I want to do. Get some breakfast. That's all I want. I'm ready to go home, ready to get in bed. I'm not going fishing again. adds insult to injury. Jesus isn't a fisherman. Don't know if you know that or not. He's not a fisherman. And so Jesus comes to professional fishermen. This is their job. This is their livelihood. And he goes, hey, why don't we try this again? If I'm Peter, I'm like, hey, Jesus, listen. I don't come into your carpentry shop and tell you how to build tables, man. I don't tell you how to build chairs. I don't tell you how to preach sermons. I was just listening to that. Here's the point that I would have changed in the sermon you just preached in my boat a second ago. If I'm Peter, that's what I'm doing. Like, hey, Jesus, you leave the fishing to me. And if we're not careful, I think that's where some of us are. Hey, Jesus, you leave this to me. You leave my finances to me. You leave my relationships to me. You leave my sin to me. You leave my addiction to me. And it's real easy, isn't it, sometimes, to look at this story and go, Peter, you're an idiot. That's Jesus. But we do the same thing. Hey, Jesus, this part of my life, it's off limits. This part of my life, you can't have this part of my life. And I think he's expecting Jesus to go, hey, yeah, you're right. My bad. Let's do this another time. So we've worked hard all night long. We put in the work. We put in the time. We've got nothing to show for it. And I think that's where some of us are. That we've worked hard day after day after day. Maybe as a parent. As a parent, you've worked hard. You've read the books. You've listened to the podcast. Maybe you've even sought counseling. You've done all the things right, and yet you're still struggling and coming up empty every single day when it comes to the way that you're raising your kids. Or maybe it's in your relationships. That you've done all of the things for your relationship, for your marriage, and your marriage just isn't seem to work. I mean, you've even learned your spouse's love language only to find out that your spouse is bilingual. Maybe you've tried it at work. You've done all the things and your boss just keeps getting on to you and keeps getting on to you and keeps getting on to you, and your way's not working and you just keep coming up empty. Maybe it's in your health. Maybe it's in your finances. Maybe it's in that addiction that you can't seem to get rid of. You keep trying things your way and your way and your way and your way, and you go, I've been working hard and I've been working hard and I've been working hard, and every single time I come back and my nets are empty. Jesus, we've been fishing all night. We haven't caught anything. We've got nothing to show for it. See, I don't know if he's embarrassed. Hey, Jesus, listen. We've been fishing. We didn't catch anything. So don't make me go out again. In fact, there are other fishermen who are going to watch us go back out, and they're going to wonder what we're doing. And so Jesus, can we just not? Can we just pretend like this conversation didn't happen? Maybe he's embarrassed. Maybe he's annoyed. Hey, Jesus, we tried it. It's not going to work, man. I don't know how he said it, but I think there's plenty more emotion in this line than we ever read in. In fact, in the book, When Your Way Isn't Working, Kyle Idleman gives us 4 emotions. There's plenty of other emotions that Peter could have gone through, but he gives us 4. And I want to take just a few moments and kind of talk about these 4. The first one is discouragement. Discouragement. It's a loss of confidence. It's a loss of enthusiasm. It's being discouraged is an ongoing state where we have no confidence whatsoever, no enthusiasm, no passion, and it continues to surface and surface and surface and surface till finally you're just like, you know what? I'm just kind of done. I think there's a lot of us that can relate to this idea of discouragement when it comes to our nets. Whatever your net may be, that there's some of us that go, I'm just so discouraged by the fact that I keep trying and I keep trying and I keep trying, and it just keeps coming back empty. And so I'm done being passionate about it. I don't have any more enthusiasm when it comes to that anymore. The second emotion that Kyle talks about in his book is fatigue. Fatigue. Think about these guys. They've been fishing all night long. They're fatigued. It's this mental state. It's this physical state of tiredness. Any parents in the room, right? You know what this is like. Where you're just fatigued, where you're just so tired. You've tried things your way, and you just keep waking up every single day just more tired and more tired and more tired. I think of Elijah. He sits under a tree, and he's like, hey, God, just take my life. I'm just tired. Another emotion is frustration. Frustration is one of those emotions, though, that it kind of errs on the side of anger. See, frustration runs into anger. When you get more and more frustrated, when you get more and more upset, what happens is you start to get angry, and then you become irritable, and then no one wants to be around you when you continue to be frustrated and angry and irritable. The last emotion is anxiety. Anxiety. It's this feeling of worry. It's this feeling of unease. When you're facing this moment of, I don't know what's going to happen the next time. I have no control over this. And so because I have no control, I'm just going to continue to worry and worry and worry about whatever. And these 4 emotions, and I think there are a dozen more emotions we could talk about today. But these 4 emotions are 4 emotions we see in this text. I mean, think about Peter. He's discouraged. He's gone out fishing. He's caught literally nothing. He's absolutely discouraged in this moment. He's a professional fisherman. This is what he's supposed to do. Just like some of us. In our profession, this is what we're supposed to do, and it feels like we're not getting any ground every day. And we're discouraged. He's worn out. He's fatigued. I mean, he's worked hard all night long. And there's something about when you've worked hard on a project and you start to see results, right? He's worked hard on a project and not seen anything. This is kind of like when you get on your computer and you start to type out that report, and then all of a sudden you forgot to hit save, or your computer crashes and you got nothing to show for it. That's where he's at. He's tired, he's exhausted, he's fatigued. He's also frustrated. Absolutely frustrated. Frustrated with the timing of Jesus. I mean, he's got the nets clean. And Jesus gets in the boat. He's like, I'm ready to go home, Jesus. And Jesus gets in the boat. He's frustrated. He's frustrated with Jesus' timing. He's frustrated with Jesus' question. Hey, let's go fishing. He's also anxious. Why would the next time be any different than this last time? And he starts to worry. Perhaps that sea that we fished in day after day, year after year, that my family's fished in for all of these years, perhaps there's just no more fish in there. He starts to worry. And now he's got the nets put away. And Jesus comes to him and says, hey, let's go fishing. Jesus, we haven't caught anything. And I think he's expecting Jesus to bail him out and go, you're right. Let's do this another day. Jesus doesn't say a word. So Peter finishes the sentence. Check this out. This is Peter. But because you say so, I will let down the nets. If you say so. When do you break out the if you say so phrase? When do you break that out? I'll help you out, okay? It's when you are tired of arguing. That's when you break that statement out. Let me play out a scenario for you. Let's say after church today, you're going to lunch, okay? And you're on your way to lunch and your spouse is driving and your spouse is obviously lost on the way to said restaurant. They're lost. And you lean over to them and you say, hey, don't you think we should pull up directions on the iPhone or the Android or whatever phone you got? Don't you think we should pull up directions on that? And your spouse says, no, I'm not lost. I know exactly where I'm going. If you say so. Right? That's when you pull out the if you say so phrase. That's when you break it out. Hey, Jesus, we're not going to catch anything. But if you say so, guess we'll go ahead and go. See, I don't think he's excited. He's going, hey, Jesus, this is a terrible idea. I don't think this is going to work. But because you say so, I guess. Hey, Jesus, the last time, it didn't work. Why is this time going to be any different? See, here's the principle that Jesus is teaching Peter and he's teaching us today. It's this: trust and obey Jesus even when it seems illogical. Even when it seems illogical, trust and obey him. See, if I'm Peter in that moment, I'm going, hey, Jesus, it's the same boat. It's the same nets. It's the same water. It's the same fish. It's the same people in the boat with me. It's all the same. Maybe today you're going, hey, Jesus, it's still the same marriage. It's still the same addiction. It's still the same financial situation. It's still the same job. It's still the same neighborhood. It's still the same, fill in the blank. It's still the same. What's gonna be different this next time? You know what's different? This time Jesus is in the boat. That's what's different. When Jesus is in the boat, that changes everything. See, the first time they went out, it was all about production. We got to produce fish and produce fish and produce fish. But this time, it's about a connection. Jesus is in the boat, and that's going to make all the difference in the world. If you say so, look at verse 6. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. And so they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and they filled both boats so full that it began to sink. And when Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." I don't know about you, but I've been in church for a long time. Maybe you've been in church this is your first week, and you're hearing this for the first time, and you're going, this is an amazing story. It's so cool. But if you're like me and you've been in church for a long time, and you hear this story and you're like, oh, cool, yeah, I know the next part too. The next part, he tells them, hey, follow me and I'll make you a fisher of men. It's a great story. And then they go off and they do some amazing things. Don't lose sight of what's happening here. These guys go out in a time of day when you don't catch fish. They go out in a time where other people will be looking at them going, what are you doing? Why are you going back out? You just cleaned your nets. What are you doing? And these guys go out. It's illogical. And as they go out, they lower their nets, and within a split second, Jesus is just filling the nets full of fish. And as they pull the nets in, they signal to their buddies and say, hey, come help, come help. And then the other boat comes over, and don't miss this. They have so many fish in their boats that the boats begin to sink. See, if I'm in that moment, I'm like, hey, Jesus, grab a net, man. Help me out. Hey, Jesus, what are you doing next week? We could really use another haul like this one. I got to close out the quarter. Maybe you're going, hey, Jesus, beginner's luck, man. Everything changes in this moment. But you notice what Peter does? Instead of being in awe of the amount of fish and the miracle that's taking place in the boat, he's in awe of the miracle worker. He's in awe of Jesus. And he gets down on his knees in the boat and he says, get away from me. I am a sinful man. He's amazed at Jesus. And those of us that do know the rest of the story, you know that he calls him to something greater. He leaves the fish there and follows Jesus for 3 years. And you have to wonder, and this is where maybe I'm going to mess with some of your theology a little bit. You have to wonder if perhaps they're sitting around a campfire a couple years later. And Peter has seen Jesus do miracle after miracle. He's seen water turned into wine. He's seen him feed all sorts of people, thousands of people with a Happy Meal. He's walked on water. He's done some amazing things. He's seen Jesus do amazing things. You ever wonder if there's a time where he's sitting around a campfire looking at Jesus going, hey, Jesus, remember that day we went fishing? And Jesus like, yeah, I remember that day. It was a great day. We caught a bunch of fish. We left them on shore. You followed me. It was a great day. Hey, Jesus, did you make fish not come to me earlier in the day? Jesus like, well, look at the time. That's going to mess with some of your theology, isn't it? But perhaps maybe the reason why some of us are walking around with an empty net is because Jesus is trying to get our attention. Perhaps the reason that some of us keep trying and trying our way and our way and our way is because Jesus is going, hey, would you just trust me? Would you trust and obey? Even when it seems illogical, would you trust me with your finances? Would you trust me with that relationship? Would you trust me with that addiction? Would you trust me with fill in the blank? Even when it seems illogical, maybe perhaps Jesus is saying, would you just trust me? Would you let go of the branch and see that I've got something greater for you? Would you cast your nets to find out that I've got something so much greater than what you're experiencing in the moment that you're in right now? Would you trust me in this season of your life? Would you trust me in the next season of your life? Would you trust me even when it feels completely and totally illogical? So here's what I want to do today. As we wrap up, I want to bring you to 4 points that I think that all of us can probably relate to one of these 4 things. When our way is not working, that we could see that one of these 4 things is the next step for us. The first one is this, that we would see our empty nets, that we would see our hard work. See, a lot of us, we've been carrying around a net and carrying around a net and carrying around a net in our job, in our relationships, in our neighborhood, in our finances, in that addiction. We've been carrying around the nets and we've been trying to do all of the hard work. And so maybe for some of us today, it's simply to recognize that we've put in the work, but then to take it a step further and realize that our way isn't working, that we've got to do the next thing. And that's invite Jesus into the boat. We've got to welcome Jesus aboard. Hey, Jesus, would you get in the boat with me? Would you get into my circumstance with me? There's a lot of us that we've been carrying around the net far too long going, I haven't figured it out and I don't know, but I'm going to keep trying, I'm going to keep trying, I'm going to keep trying. Perhaps instead of keep trying, we just invite Jesus into the boat with us. I mean, there's some of us that we've been Googling our problem more than we've ever been talking to Jesus about our problem. We've been telling other people about the thing, but not really telling Jesus about the thing. And so for some of us, we need to invite Jesus into the boat with us. And then we need to do what Peter does. We need to let our nets down. See, Peter very easily could have said, hey, Jesus, we went out, we fished, we didn't catch anything, I'm going home. But he doesn't. He's heard enough of what Jesus has said. He's like, you know what, Jesus, if you say so, I'll do it. Some of us, we are far educated beyond our obedience. We hear story after story after story of what Jesus is capable of doing, what God is capable of doing, and yet we've never let our nets down. Or maybe it's been years since we've let our nets down. Because we're comfortable in the boat. We're comfortable doing what we do. Maybe for some of us, it's time for us to let our nets down. Or maybe for some of us, it's time to let our nets down again. And then when we do so, we need to expect and reflect. We need to expect that God is capable and able to do more than we could ever ask or imagine. We need to expect that God can do things in our life, that God can fill our boat, that God can fill our net, that God can do something about the circumstance that you find yourself in. But then we need to do what Peter does. We need to reflect. See, I think a lot of us, we might invite Jesus into the boat and we might let the nets down, but then when God comes through, we're like, look what I did. I'm so good. Peter could have taken the boats in and been like, I got fish for sale. But he doesn't. He falls on his knees and he reflects on who God is and what Jesus is capable and able to do in his life, and he follows him, even to the point of death. Where are you at today? Are you carrying around an empty net? Do you continue to carry around an empty net day after day into your job, into your school, into your neighborhood, into your family, with your finances? Do you continue to carry around an empty net going, I'm trying and I'm trying, I'm trying? Maybe for some of us, it's time for us to say, my way's not working. And I need to invite Jesus into my life. I need to invite Jesus into my boat, into my circumstance, into this season of my life. And when we do, we have to trust and obey, even when it seems illogical. We might let our nets down and allow him to do more than we could ask or imagine. And then when he does, we fall on our knees before him and realize and recognize who he is and what he's done in and through and for us. For some of you, you're here today and you've never made Jesus the Lord of your life. I want to invite you to do that today. I want to invite you to let your nets down, to realize that there are areas of your life where sin has continued to come into your life, and just let your nets down today to say, Jesus, would you come into my circumstance of my sin? Would you wash me of all of my sin away? We call that baptism. We'd love to talk to you today about what that looks like or what that could look like for you. For the rest of us, it's an opportunity for us today to let our nets down again and to expect and reflect on what he has for us. Let's pray. God, I thank you. I thank you for this story. I thank you that you're willing to get in the boat with us. That for so many of us, we carry around these empty nets. But that God, you're willing and you're able to get in the boat and do something about our circumstance. And so God, today, my hope and my prayer is that we would simply let our nets down. And that God, you would do more in our families. You would do more in our finances. You would do more in our workplace. You'd do more in whatever area that we're carrying around an empty net today. And when you do, allow us to see that it was you and not us, and allow us to have the response that Peter has in total worship. And so God, today as we sing this song, my hope and my prayer is that all of us in this place, and we would sing it and reflect who you are, and that only your way works. God, we love you and we thank you. It's your name that we pray. Amen.